Okay, in this clip we're going to look at making another type of mortise and tenon joint, and this joint is called a bridle joint. So it's kind of an open mortise and tenon joint. You can see that fits in and it's cut down to the depth of the thickness of wood, but it's open here. Okay, now this again is a very common joint. It's a joint you might use on furniture if you're making a table or a chair, something like that. It's a joint that you may use. This is a bridle joint. So we're going to look now at making this part, and to make this part, first of all we need to mark it out. So to mark it out we're going to use a steel ruler and a marking gauge. We're going to take our piece of softwood here, and the first thing we do is mark the thickness of the wood. So we line these two surfaces up flush, and let's go all the way around using the second piece of wood. This is actually the one that I've marked out already, so we'll be using that in a minute. So there we go. So we've marked on here the thickness of the wood down, and we've marked it all the way round. The next thing is to use our steel ruler, and we measure our piece of wood, which is 45mm wide, and divide that into 3, just 15, and again we use the steel ruler there, you can see, to set the depth on the marking pin there at 15. We can then take our marking gauge and, with the point away from us, drag it down once, drag it down the other way, across the top. Slightly more difficult. Make sure, of course, the point is pointing away from you. If you try and do it forward, it will just dig in. You need to drag it backwards and turn that round. And I think you can see those marks there, but I'm just going to take a sharp pencil and run that around. Now, you might have noticed that this is the same process that we used for making the tenon part of the mortise and tenon joint, but the difference is now is here we're going to mark our waist, because we're going to remove this central portion to create our bridle joint. So we've marked that section there, and now we're ready to cut down and then use a chisel and a mallet to take out this central section, and I'm going to show you how to do that now. Now the cutting is exactly the same as cutting the earlier part. So if we cut the tenon, we just cut down using a tenon saw, cut at 45 degrees, come back round, turn it round and cut. And to save a bit of time there, I've done this one already. So you can see I've made 2 cuts down here. There's my waist marked, and my cuts come all the way down to the line here. So now we're going to remove this part using a chisel and a mallet. So I'm going to move over to here, and here I've got a bench hook, and the first thing I'm going to do is just take the chisel. I've got a chisel here which is just slightly narrower than the piece of I need to remove, and the bevel chisel, you can see, has got a blade shape like that. So we're going to start off, to take off a lot of material, we're going to start off this way around, and we're just going to, in this method, just hitting it nice and squarely. We're using a bench hook here so we don't mess up the bench. And you can see there that I've cut out roughly about 1/3 of the material. I'm now going to make another cut, about another centimetre down. we're cutting this exactly third. Sometimes we cut it to just the width of the chisel, which would make it a little easier. You can see there I'm down to halfway. Now, when I get close to the line, I've been using the chisel this way round, and that cuts in, that makes quite a deep cut. Now, to finish off, it's going to be very difficult to cut down straight because we want to cut exactly onto that line. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to put the piece of wood in the vise, and I think you can just about see that there. And I'm now going to use the chisel blade the other way round. And that gives me a more controlled cut to cut into the centre. Now we don't want to go all the way across because the wood the other side will split. So I've gone in just there, gone in down to the line, but I've still got a way to go the other side. So now I'm going to put it in this side, again using the chisel that way round. Just taking the last bits out. And there we go, that's not a bad fit, it just needs a little bit more work, but I think we've got a little bit in there we could still take out. If the worst comes to the worst, we can use a little bit of abrasive paper just to clean that up. But there is our bridle joint fitted now to the first component.